It is now 6:30 p.m. November 1st. I want to jump ahead, I'll tell you. And I'm calling the Select Board meeting of the town of Newfane to order. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of October 18th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. The first thing I would like to comment on, that there's a thing on budget meetings. John stated that the budget meeting, that kind of looks like I'm telling people when we worked out when it was amongst us.
Well, once we discussed
We
it,
discussed.
then that was useful.
Yeah, I summarized,
Okay.
but it's just, you might just use some other word than stick, because it looks a little like I set the meeting.
Oh, you did.
Okay, that's it.
I know.
That's a good start.
Was we supposed to pretend?
Okay. Any other additions or corrections to the minutes?
Hey, on page 2, where it talks about, I think that the second line on page 2, the potential of 4 other buyouts isn't with the tax sale, but is with hazardous mitigation.
What paragraph?
Just the second line.
Okay.
So that should have been with the hazardous mitigation grant program.
Oh.
And then under the Lindgren pre-hearing, which is under new business, I had a pre-hearing phone conference, and I will be attending the hearing, correctly stated here, on the 15th. And I believe that the language, I have already had the authorization to sign for the town for EWP. This was authorization for me to represent the Lindgrens for the appeal. So the very last, under Lindgren pre-hearing, you have, it's the one who, the next to the very last line of the first paragraph of that. And so you say, Gloria will be the authorized signer for the town for EWP. No, I already am that. And so this is I'm going to be the authorized representative for the appeal.
Okay.
And that'll be tied back down into the next, it's kind of just a fair repeat in the next paragraph to get that.
Is there a document that needs to be signed?
We did sign it. We did
Okay,
sign it.
so that was the representative.
Yes, that was the representative, and then we did sign as the representative in the next.
Any other additions or corrections? Hearing none, can amend it to pass the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next item of business is the road foreman's report. Todd, would you like to begin road commissioning as well?
The roads are in good shape. We really didn't have any serious problems, luckily, with the storm. We had quite a few trees down that we spent until like 1:30 in the morning cutting out of the roads. And we're still actually cleaning up some of the trees that came down. The crew went out before the storm and after the storm and cleaned culverts and opened up drains and used a grader to open up some runouts and help a lot of the roads quite a bit. The 09 Sterling is back at Patriot Truck Service for some more repairs. Mike O'Donnell sandblasted the dump body on the 06 Sterling because it was starting to rust pretty good, and then he repainted it, so that should go for a while. Most of the trucks have snow tires on them. The only one that doesn't is our little 1 ton, but it will have next week. And the plow frames we put back on the trucks today. Bridge 14 by the South Newfane store is all but done. I think they're just waiting to do some striping on the blacktop there.
They were actually doing that as I was on my way here.
Yeah, so that should be done tonight probably then. As far as the signs on Dover Road, Depot Road, the Williamsville Village has all its speed limit signs up now. The trucks entering sign has been put up on Depot. The covered bridge kiosk is back up by the bridge. And hopefully next week, if the weather cooperates, we'll be doing the ones in South Newfane. Hopefully. Lower Spring Hill Box Culvert and Depot Hill Slide. I met with John Alexander and Mark Pickering from the state. The Lower Spring Hill Box Culvert, John says needs to be replaced. You know, sometime fairly soon. The water's running underneath one abutment, pretty much just about the full length of the abutment, and one of the wing walls is cracked pretty bad. So he has requested the state do a hydraulic study on that to get it done for us for spring. I think he probably will give us some grant money to replace it, hopefully. The Depot Hill Slide, he's concerned about that again. He would like us to dig down a ways and try to shelf it and put some riprap in there. So I'm going to try to get some contractors to look at both these projects and get us some prices here fairly quick. Hickey Road Bridge and bank stabilization work. Todd Manise just from A&R just happened to stop in the garage the other day, which I was glad. I asked him about the Hickey Road Bridge that we've been discussing this for so many meetings. And he was going to talk to FEMA and forgot, he said, so he's going to get a hold of Dan, go over that with Dan again, and get a hold of FEMA to see what we can do with that. The winter sand is in, it's all put up. We mixed some salt in with it. We signed a salt contract with Cargill Salt this year with Barrett Trucking, like we have for quite a few years. We looked at the state bid. Actually, John and I talked about the state bid before. The only problem with the state bid is you have to tell them how many tons you want for the winter. You have to accept that many tons. So if you have a winter where you don't use it, you're stuck with it. And we don't have any place to store it that way, so we buy it as we need it. And it's actually thinks it saves the town quite a bit of money because, like I said, if you get a winter like last winter, we don't use that much. We don't have to spend that much. So that is all I have.
So when you say John, do you mean John Alexander?
No, you.
Me?
Remember you and I talked about it?
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay. I know. I just wasn't sure. That
Yeah, we decided to go
right.
where we've always
Keep
gone.
going the way we're
Yeah.
going. Yes, that's great. Okay. Any comments specific to the report? Okay, hearing none. We'll go on to the vote on do we accept the report as read.
Did we have a motion?
We did, didn't we have? Oh, I'm sorry. Could I have a motion then to approve the work performance report? Okay, all those in any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. While we're on road business, we might as well turn to the letter that we received. Let's see if I can locate it. Thank you. You have a copy of it? Great, thank you. That basically we received a letter of essentially complaint that water runs off the road, which the owner of property at 5 Baker Brook feels is adversely affected by buildup of the height of the road. And apparently this, if you read the letter, I don't know if we distributed it to everybody.
Yes.
I guess I did. This has been going on, you know, this is an old problem because I notice he refers to Pete Van Loon as the chair of the board, so this obviously goes back a long ways. Unfortunately, he, as he says, not necessarily in sequence when he lists the events. It's hard to know when any of this occurred, but clearly the owner is kind of getting more upset about it in that he went to the trouble of getting his letter notarized. And you, Pat, in sending out the message to us, you said certified letter. We received this certified? Mm-hmm. Okay. Not that it matters. It just means, gives us an indication that the owner's kind of concerned, and I'm trying to emphasize the seriousness. So I asked Todd if he would just take a look at what happened after the flood, after this last storm, to see if there was any further damage, because that was certainly one of the concerns that the person had in writing us the letter. So Todd, do you want to just give us a quick summary of where we stand with this, what the situation is, and your observations?
Yeah, his house sits between Dover Road and Baker Brook, and this has been an ongoing issue from way back when Jim Gray was on the board. We put a berm up alongside the road on Baker Brook Road to stop the water from going down onto his property. That berm, when I went over there and looked, the berm is still there. There's one little section that is missing, but it's basically because whoever's been working on his house, been driving up and down over the bank right there. Chris and I looked at it today, and I don't see where it's any problem. I mean, I can put up more of a berm if that's what he would like. As far as Dover Road goes, Dover Road hasn't changed since I've been here. So One thing I did notice though is he's taking all the gutters off his house, and he's got a lot of roof lines there. And I think what's happening is that the actual water coming off the roof is where a lot of his problem is. I don't know what you think, Chris. I mean, we didn't really come up with anything where the road has changed, or we've done anything different for
Well,
years.
Just for the public's knowledge, Chris went with Todd and looked at this earlier today. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, there's one section headed down Baker Brook Road that's this wide, where the berm is slightly shucked out, which he could put a little bit more gravel in that, but the berm is substantial enough so that there's no water that's jumping over top of it into the yard. It's clear that there's a serious drainage issue for the whole property with the amount of water and so on that we've had for the last couple of years. So it doesn't surprise me there, but
There's
it's
a couple
not-
of big holes right next to Baker Brook.
right.
I would assume that those happened during Irene. I think that's what he's referring to. And it's probably something that Gloria should have looked at. I mean, if he called us ahead of time or before, we could have looked at it. But again, I don't see where the drainage is off the town roads is an issue.
But even on that, it didn't appear to me that the wall to the edge of Baker Brook there had any damage at all. It's still just as firm and solid. It's just,
Right.
you know, where you'll get some soft ground and it'll
Kind of
drain
slide
on
away.
through. Yeah.
What does he mean by the word subsistence? Yeah, I know subsistence living.
Loss of. It goes away. It's gradual erosion. I'm struck a little bit by a couple of things in this letter. One is that he's citing engineering ventures out of Burlington, as well as Beck Engineering. From any knowledge anybody has, do we have any of these reports?
I've never
I
seen
mean, if
it.
he's trying to say that the town, you know, he's got engineers to back the idea that the town is liable, I would think that we might want to have a look at that data.
No, I've never seen anything. But
Yeah.
So what would the board propose that we do in response to this letter, or if anything? I'm not-
Well, one question I have is that in the last paragraph, he says that workers or contractors for the town have deliberately graded roads to drain onto our property.
you know, it's-
I mean, is that just the,
when we went, that's one of the reasons I want to look at it, because just to make sure that, you know, Steve or somebody else hasn't graded that way, and it is, it's actually tipped the other way. It's nothing different. It's been there for years. I mean, the berm's actually got grass growing in it, and the trees right behind the berm are all still standing up straight. And again, I think he's got a drainage issue in the whole property, but
Did you do any of those?
cutouts, runouts,
Yeah.
no.
Okay, because I kind of got the impression that he was saying that.
is this the property on the corner?
Yeah, it's that
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
it's
Sort of below the,
It's where
And those berms are clear, as he said, you know, there's really solid rooted grass on those berms. So even the idea that the guys would have come and graded incorrectly or got a little too close is not happening either. You know, the berms are intact. So I certainly don't see that.
I mean, I suppose the board could write him a letter and asking him to see what Chris was talking about, the paperwork from the two
Right.
companies he had look at it, and then
I
tell him
think
that
we
we'll
need to respond in some way that's.
tell him that, you know, basically the berms are still in place, and but we'd like to see what the engineering firms had to say.
you want me to ask Matthew Beck?
Well, we should probably go through this guy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's citing engineering reports that he's holding, and I don't, and saying.
Well, I don't know if he actually has reports. You know, he's inspected the drainage. He stated. I
That was
wonder,
the one I was reading there.
is there one where he actually has a physical
Affected
report?
areas of
Just said
subsistence
inspected
in my
areas.
yard, he found for it.
Yeah, I'm just not sure he has
Okay.
anything written. But we could ask for whether he does have any written reports.
Particularly on the one from Engineering Ventures, because he's
Exactly.
stating that proper road drains should be constructed by the town. So, what is this engineer saying? What does he deem proper?
Mhm.
You know, and there's very limited room to do a whole lot of work in there, as we
Right.
know.
You got a retaining wall on one side that goes uphill, and you got the retaining wall on the other side that goes down into his
Right.
property, so there's really not, and there's ledge. just as you enter that road. So.
Could I suggest that someone on the board draft a letter? It doesn't look like this has been going on for years, and he was worried about it in relation to the storm. It seems to have survived that storm, but it doesn't look like we have to do something tonight. But I wonder if one of the board could draft a letter, and then we could review it at the next board meeting. And I'm going to be direct and ask Chris if
Yes,
you would be willing to write that letter.
I will do that.
Okay. So I don't think we need a motion to that effect, if we can, okay? All right, moving forward. We're now to scheduled members of the public, and the first on is Peter Bowman and Dan Hull. Dan is not able to be here tonight. He has a sleep study report to do, so he has to sleep.
All
I
night.
don't see how he gets to sleep. Do we get to sleep?
Probably
You
snoring
bet.
right now.
Okay, so Peter, are you here?
I am.
Peter, could you tell us a little bit about your report? I don't, we are, we don't have to go into great detail here, but if you could tell us a little bit about the alternatives that you've laid out, and perhaps a little bit to give us some guidance on
We do also have
advantages.
a copy of this.
We all should have a copy.
Yeah.
We do have a copy of your report. All the members do. But if you could tell us a little bit about the four alternatives that you defined, and perhaps a little bit about advantages and disadvantages, and why we would opt. Understanding that, of course, since FEMA is paying for this, the number one priority is often that FEMA must agree that they will pay for it, and that has to do with what was there before.
Right.
Okay.
And
So-
then Steve Tarbox with me, he's our structural engineer.
Steve, what is it? Tarble?
Steve Tarbox.
Tarbox?
Yes.
Okay.
And Steve actually put these numbers together.
Okay.
Did the analysis of the deck. That's what we're really talking about here. Is
Okay.
what kind of deck we should replace there.
Right.
Originally, as I recall, or I believe, it was a steel beam with a steel deck.
Mm-hmm.
It's corrugated, paved over it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And we looked at four different alternatives, and maybe Steve, you should really kind of go through these.
Okay.
Well, oh, sure. We got copies of the.
Yes, we have the.
Do you have?
Quick.
No.
Yeah. No, actually, this is.
No, you have something else.
These
Okay.
are diagrams.
Yeah.
of
Okay,
the different,
great. Thank you.
Of the different alternatives.
Uh-huh.
It always helps to have something to look at.
Pictures.
rather
Yeah,
than
pictures. we like.
Thank you.
numbers. So,
Thank you.
So in my next life, I can start building bridges.
And, well, as Peter said, we looked at four different options, and I put together some examples, and they're from different sources, so each example is a little different than the way it looks, but as Peter mentioned, I believe the original bridge was a steel beam with a precast composite deck. And I did a very quick rudimentary analysis to come up with a size beam that needs to be provided here, and the thickness of deck to meet the current V-Trans standards. And I've listed here the components of the deck. And it's important to note here that this is only the deck. The abutments, all
Right.
the earthwork, the approaches, all that, it really is the same in all examples. So the variable is just specifically the deck.
Gotcha.
So what you're looking at here certainly is not the cost of the entire bridge, only the deck. So that you can get an idea of the differential cost.
Now, just to cut quickly to an important, would all four meet V-Trans standards?
Yes, they would.
Okay, thank you.
So, going from the original, it's $172,000 for the deck alone. The concrete deck is cast in place.
So you're saying the first alternative is the one that most matches the original design?
Yes, and it's the most expensive. These are in descending order of cost.
This is what the deck, that one
Yeah.
there is what you're looking
Okay.
at.
Yeah, exactly. That's the steel beam and cast-in-place concrete deck. So that's going to cost in the neighborhood of about $170,000, $175,000 for the deck alone. The next lower cost alternative would be a concrete box beam, which
And that's this one here.
yeah. And that's around 15,000 less. I'm not sure longevity that there is much of a difference between one. They're completely different, but I'm not sure one would last longer. I'm not sure one is more durable than the other. They're just different styles of bridges to get the same job done.
One thing you should, different, the old beams were, let's call it plain steel beams. Nowadays, the beams that we would be using would be, sometimes people call them Corten, or the brown stuff that basically oxidizes on the outside, so you never have to paint it or anything like that. And they last considerably longer without as much maintenance.
But that's simply, it's still considered pretty much the same thing. I mean, the question is whether FEMA will look at it and say, oh, you improved it, you did something
Yeah,
better.
I think that's pretty much the standard of the industry,
Okay.
particularly in
Okay.
Vermont, it is. And our understanding is that we're to follow the current standards, and this is what we've done in other towns,
Mm-hmm.
as far as what both A&R requires and the VCHAS requires. And so that's what this is based upon, too.
Okay, so the first two both clearly fit that. Okay.
All four do.
Oh, all four.
Yes, all four would meet the standards.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the third one is the next D beam, which is, that's a sort of a New England product. They're common around this area. And there's some savings to go with that, down to $128,000. And again, this is all precast concrete. They're heavier. Going back up to the precast box beams, there'll be 5 sections, and they set those right next to each other, and then they grout them together. With the next beams, it's basically 2 sections that have 2 stems, and so they're rather heavy, and that's the reason why the labor cost and the equipment cost is higher, because it would take a bigger crane and potentially 2 cranes to set those versus the other choices. And then the last beam, the one that's the least expensive, is the bulk key, and that's on the top, front page of what we handed out. And in some ways, it sort of is similar to the next D beam. Again, there would be 5 sections that step next to each other and grouted together, and then in all cases, it's covered with 3 inches of asphalt. The overall width, the curb-to-curb width is going to be 18 feet, I believe, in this unit.
Which is a little bit wider than what you had there before. I believe it was 14 feet before. But for the traffic volume there, which isn't very high, it's about probably 50 vehicles a day, based upon the number of houses up there. The current standards for that would be an 18-foot wide bridge, and so that's what we're using. Again, our experience is that FEMA does approve that because it meets.
Well, we're running into some complex, situations where, to be frank, where things are changing a little bit on the FEMA side, and so whereas they have been approving, whether they will continue or whether they're going to consider something an improved is FEMA's call, and then the whole process. So we're going to have to make a judgment call on what we're going to try to do.
But you're
to ask
saying,
me.
all of these four are designed for 18.
That's right, 18-foot travel.
On any of the four, could they be designed to the exact length and width of the old bridge?
Let's talk about this thing separately. The width, absolutely. The length is slightly longer by just a couple feet, because A&R wanted us to do that, okay? And that, cost-wise, I don't think it's much difference. But they asked us to make it slightly longer. It was a 70, I think it was 78, we went to 80 feet, something like that. They also have us moving it, how do I going to say this, further from Dover Road. Okay, to line up better with the geometry of the stream.
But it's still in the town right of way.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
We should keep it, if we can keep it 18 feet, we should. That bridge is always hard to get back onto in the winter with the plows, when it was 12 foot. That's why the bandrail used to get knocked over quite a bit. There's not much room to swing onto that bridge from Hunter Brook.
I'm just noting, did you read Dan's notes here? Where it says confirm that it's being designed
Yes.
new to the prior length and width, so no additional money to town? Is that the case?
Yeah,
I think so.
well, what we're saying is that it's 4 feet wider and 2 feet longer.
So would the town pay for the
We-
difference?
This is one of these where we're going to have to get Christina's help on this for one thing, and we're going to have to submit, and we're going to have to see what FEMA says.
And Christina's very familiar with this, because two of the bridges that I'm referring to are bridges that she worked on in Halifax. One was just opened a week ago, and the other they're working on right now. They're putting the footings in.
I think by signing the codes and standards for the state or for the town, you should be covered with that, because you're bringing it up to codes and standards.
That's right.
We signed off on that last year, so I think we're good with that.
Well,
But it
it's
just seemed
complicated because if you look at we'll get to this a little later with what their reaction is to the denial. We are a little bit between a rock and a hard place in that we are obliged to follow A&R standards, but FEMA is not obligated. While they require us to follow A&R standards, they won't necessarily pay for A&R standards and may yet hit us with this is additional. So we're going to have to negotiate through this, and I think my thought is we'll need Christina's help to navigate this water.
Because she said definitely, I mean, this is a later thing, but to appeal it.
Yeah.
So-
Well, that's about the other thing.
That is.
That's the other. Now, your role in this is the design, right? So what you're saying basically is you need us to decide which we're going with for you to move forward on your completing the design. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
We obviously made a suggestion that you go with the lower cost alternative here, thinking that it's equal to the other three alternatives as far as quality and so forth.
Actually, John Alexander's note back to you was we could go with the lower cost.
That's what John Alexander said also, that the light, just to read aloud, because I think I may have, no, I sent it to you, Todd, but not to everybody. It said, all four proposals are sufficient. However, based on past experiences with FEMA, I would assume they would want the less expensive option. I have no preferences.
Right.
So the state does not have a preference. The weirdness of this is FEMA isn't necessarily going to hinge whether it's an improvement or not on the cost that we pay. So they can still say, even if we go with a $110,000 option and essentially save the government $62 grand, they still could say it's too long and too wide. But we will see, and we'll move forward. But I think we'll have to discuss, and we'll have to get back to you as soon as we can. How long do you think it will take you to do the design once we come back and say this is the one we want?
I think we could have plans and specs to you in approximately a month.
Okay.
To be ready to go out to bid.
Okay.
That's
because we need to move forward. It actually costs us money on the temporary bridge and on the easements. Every month we sit there and wait, and we get closer to having to we will have to ask for an extension from FEMA in any case.
The earliest we can probably do anything is like April 15th on that.
Oh, right, we also, in terms of actually building
Yeah,
it,
we'll get into the
we're not gonna be able to build anyway.
If they let us in, that's soon.
All right, so-
Actually, the situation there, A&R has allowed construction basically through the winter on the other bridge that I just referred to earlier. And apparently that's their policy. If you think about it, I think they just want to get these streams cleaned up and done with and get people out of them so they get back.
So these actually could be built during the winter, something like that?
Well, my thinking here is that we would bid this, let's say, the first of the year or so, if we can,
Right.
if you guys, you know.
Well, we won't take forever to decide.
And with the idea that as early as they can work in the spring, they would get in there and
Okay.
start construction.
Okay. All right, thank you
Do we
very
want
much.
to address Dan's questions here?
If you
Ask
wish, go
them.
ahead. Whatever you would like to bring up.
Well, I think what it says is, it looks like these costs only reflect the beams and decks.
That's what he said, yes.
Right.
Additional costs will come with abutments, something decks, stone fills, slopes, temporary bridge, reshaped land with, so,
This isn't the total cost.
Right, and this is just the decks.
This is where there are
it's
things,
just,
decision,
this
this
deck
is where
the
we need to
only
make a
thing that we
decision.
need to make a decision about.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, will adjustments or abutments have pilings? Was another question.
We've had discussions about that, and our initial thought was that we would do that possibly, but when we did borings there, the ground is, for lack of a better word, really solid. And normally you wouldn't be putting in pilings you'd put normal spread footings in for soil of that type. I know there's been good experience, particularly with the flood, about putting pilings in. But I'm not sure that we can, in this case, justify it. Steve, I don't know if you really want to say more than that.
Yes, as Peter said, the soil exploration that we did indicated that the soil is extremely firm. There's a test where they take blow counts of a split plume sampler, and the blow counts are over 100 per foot, which is very, very hard material. And also, it's very bony material. The stream bed has a lot of rocks and boulders, and who knows what's down there. So it's difficult to drive piles for sure.
And so your recommendation is not to at this point?
Well, I'm not sure there's any advantage to driving piles, and I think it would be very difficult. I've talked with a few contractors about that on the other bridges, and they were much more comfortable installing tread footings than trying to drive piles to a certain penetration and not being able to guarantee that, and having them get hung up with boulders below.
I apologize, but the word you're saying solid.
The soil is
No, but what's the word you're saying after the word solid? Spread?
Soil.
spread footings.
Spread, that's what I'm asking.
Spread.
Fred. Yes, that's, I
The
just
footing
wanted to make sure it was
spread out
spread.
wide to
Gotcha.
distribute the load.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, so we will deliberate and then we will get back as soon as possible to you to say we'll go with this alternative in terms of your design and move forward. We just will need a little advice, I think, from Christine to make sure that we're not going to get ourselves in a mess, or as little as mess as we can in terms of FEMA reimbursing us. Yes, Flora.
Who designs the abutments?
We
Yeah.
do, part of our,
You do. So we would end up being able to find out from you how much that's going to cost to get the whole. 'Cause it's
Well,
not-
actually, what we'll do is their job is they're just giving us alternatives so we can tell them which design to go with. Then we'll put it out to bid and find out what we actually have to
But when
pay.
it goes out to bid, the abutment, all of that information is there in
The
the.
whole
that's.
thing, clean up, the riprap, everything's in
Guardrail
it.
paving, riprap, the whole,
Great,
everything is there.
great. Well, thank you very much for the work you've done so far, and we'll be getting back to you very soon, and looking forward to your completed design.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next order of business is the health officer's report on the 165 Newfane Hill Road property. Tim, would you like to speak with us?
You can go up here if you want.
Yeah, come on up.
I can sit up or whatever.
You can
Pull up a chair if you wish.
pull up a chair. No, I think you should stand, you know.
No.
Well, this is a report to you in your capacity as the Board of Health on an issue which fortunately seems to be sorting itself out and resolving.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So.
All right, good. Now, next.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I do like. So I'll try not to go into excruciating detail.
Yes.
John Pfeiffer received a call October 17th about a rental property, a house, a freestanding house at 165 Newfane Hill. He looked at it and then asked me, and together we inspected. And the tenant had numerous complaints, some of which were very obvious and egregious, and included one entire sliding glass door section missing, another huge casement window missing. She complained of lots of rodents entering rather freely, and had questions about the water quality. There was also a state fire marshal report from August citing a variety of things, some of which had been mostly corrected, including not having the proper kind of GFI receptacles, a window in an upstairs bedroom which was too narrow for emergency escape, so it needed replacement, basement stairs that needed to be made safer, so forth. And at first we had a mailing address but not phone numbers of the owners, so we sent a certified letter. I first actually composed a health order, but after talking to John decided let's just see if we can get this done amicably, before we make it sort of an order, escalate the thing and start getting people testifying and who knows what. So we sent a certified letter just saying, there have been these complaints, please contact me clearly under the code, and I cited it and sent the whole copy of the whole code pretty much to her, saying this needs to be done. Then I was able to get a phone number and spoke to one of the two sisters who are owners of it. And she said, she was very concerned, they wanted to repair it, said that actually they had initiated attempts getting contractors there to repair some things, and the tenant had turned them away, or at the last moment said, no, I can't be there, don't come. And so the landowners were entirely on board, saying, yes, we want to fix this, and had showed evidence of being in contact with the fire marshal, and then getting a delay caused by the tenant to get the proper building permits to go in and repair the things. And so there was clearly a certain amount of to and fro. And then it came out that actually there was a legal hearing scheduled towards the end of October on the status of rent payment and whether in fact the tenant would be allowed to stay because of legal action. It turns out that according to the landowner, the police had raided and taken 165 marijuana plants from the property, and that the tenant and her partner were cited, arrested, so forth. And so, in fact, sort of fast forward, there is a...
This is getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah, it gets pretty interesting, yeah. The order of the court, I have a copy of, signed by the judge and the tenant, saying that the tenant will vacate the property by November 15th. But the owners are still committed to repairing it. They understand that they certainly can't try to rent it again in this condition, and so this week there's already been people to look at the well is a shallow well, sort of set in a swale, which is not ideal. And there had been a previous coliform count sent. We didn't have a copy of that, so John Feifel sent another one, which confirmed coliform bacteria. And a few days ago, someone was there and shocked it and was going to clean it and retest it and so forth. And the tenant knows, meanwhile, all along that she needs to be either boiling or purifying or using alternate water.
Okay.
There's also the landowner has provided a letter stating, when various people are going to be there to repair and replace windows, fix stairs, finish the electrical work, look at pest control against sealing against rodents. Pretty much addressing everything. So the long and the short of it is we have an involved landowner who's going to take care of things that this tenant is leaving.
Okay.
And I think it's going to kind of wrap itself up.
Two questions I would have for you, Tim. The first is I really think we should be careful in terms of the allegations that were made by the landowner. The things you're mentioning about the legal actions, and not the order to vacate, but the mentioning about the rent and the marijuana. Those are allegations by the owner, not anything we as a board or you as health officer have anything to do with that. Is that correct?
Oh, and I made clear that
just because we have film and we have reporter,
no, I made
don't
clear
want
that
us.
has nothing to do with me on issues of rent payment or non-payment.
Right.
I'm not involved. The other legal issues.
These are allegations. We have no
I
idea whether they're substantial or not.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So anytime anything like that came up, I said,
Just trying to be clear.
if you have a date in court, do it. But I'm not
Okay.
interested.
Not
I'm
relevant
just
to
interested in the code, and if it is being met, if the property is being rented. If you stop
Right.
renting the property, it doesn't matter. But before another tenant gets in, it has to be addressed.
Now, that's the second question, is there follow-up on this? I mean, in other words, in terms of the rental process and so on?
Well, once it's no longer being rented, it ceases to be our concern. I mean, I don't think we have any jurisdiction any longer because, for instance, if the owner moved back in, or
And
whatever,
they want to live in those
and
conditions?
people can live under any conditions they want, essentially. I mean, with a few exceptions that are, threats to water,
Danger
neighbors,
to the
whatever.
public health.
Sure, yeah. And we're sort of at the end of things that we only respond to complaints. In
I
other words,
see.
we don't have power to go and patrol and say,
Gotcha.
we see here you're renting, and so we're going to snoop around.
So there
I
really
mean, right or
isn't,
wrong,
we're really outside of our jurisdiction.
yeah, that's right.
to
So
speak.
if a month from now she rents it again,
Fire marshal could get involved in it.
yeah,
He should be doing an inspection before they reopen.
right,
So.
right.
Oh,
Repeat
okay.
inspection. That's true, but it's sort of
I'm sure
we
he
don't
must have
we don't
cited that.
really have the manpower, and I'm not, really again almost I don't think the mandate to go snooping around
Right.
and making sure.
The fire marshal's report should have cited them for violations that they have to fix before they can rent it again. So it should cover that.
I believe so. Yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense.
All right, but then for right now, we're talking about the health
Right.
concern. So if as far as that's concerned, as long as there is already that they have to be out by 2 weeks from now, and that would end the rental situation. So,
Exactly. And
Okay.
meanwhile, it looks like things are proceeding
Okay,
expeditiously to make sure
Great.
there's
Okay.
well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay. The next order of business is the trail sign and a comment from Bruce Hasselbeck. Is it Bach or Bach? How do you pronounce it? Hasselbeck, yeah. Okay. Bruce,
Yeah, thanks.
welcome.
As you know, we have a small parking area on the Dover Road, and the trail system then has its entrance. If you go down the driveway and to the town garage, and you take a right, and that's where the trail entrance is. And we had a little arrow type of sign that said parking, and somebody hit it and cracked and broke it. And what we would like to do is we would like to put a bigger sign, freestanding, where the parking area is, and on that sign, we could tell people that the entrance to the trail is down the driveway and to the right, so that they don't go wandering around the town garage looking for it, and they can find it more easily. And also, you folks, the select board, had put a little sign near the start of the trail where there's a mailbox and saying all dogs must be leashed, so we can put that in the sign too, and any other directives or things you'd like us to put on the sign. And it would be, I think it would be helpful so that when people go to the trail, they know where it is and can find it more readily. So that's what we have in mind, and since it's your land, we want to make sure that we're doing something that you folks like, so we just like to have authorization to do that. And while I'm up here, I just wanted to say that I would also like to comment on the cell towers when we
Well,
get to it.
yeah, we will get to that, so why don't we hold till we, just that we will, that is on our agenda, and we'll
Sure.
get to it in the next part of the meeting.
Sure.
Do you have money in the budget to put up a sign, get a sign made?
We were planning on making one ourselves, which we've done in various places in the town forest, and we were planning on doing it in the spring. You know, if you folks wanted to have a more professional sign, great, but we were just planning on doing a homemade sign.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Conservation Committee placing a sign in the parking area for the trail, Newfane Trail, or whatever they call the trail,
Forest. Town forest.
Second.
town forest.
Okay, the motion has been moved, moved and seconded. The question I have is, does the select board want to enter into the exact details of what's on the sign, or are we comfortable with going with the Newfane Conservation Commission, defining it, the wording, without returning to us?
I'm fine with that.
Right.
Okay, so could you maybe include that in the motion, that we're designating that to the Newfane Conservation Committee?
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind it being as professional as it could be, because this really is our town forest. You're talking about $20,000 grant to get this done, you know, to put in the trails and to do all of that. So it could be that I just haven't gone far enough on the trails to see the other signs. But,
Some of our signs are pretty cool.
yeah,
Um,
so,
We put in a sign last year. I don't know if any of you looked at it, but we've done a pretty good job on the
yeah,
sign.
so it's just, you know, not a little, I believe that you would absolutely do it correctly, so.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion?
All right.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Bruce.
Just a question
Do you
though.
want to talk about the cell tower?
We've done
No, we'll
this.
come back to that. It's on our agenda as a separate item.
Do we still need to have it go
Very.
through, though they wouldn't pay anything for a zoning permit to put up a sign? Because when we put up any sign, everybody else has to.
Is there a permit required for a sign? Is that correct?
Wasn't it sort of a part of the
I was
town?
going to say it's a town entity though, so I don't.
This,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I've got.
You can ask Merle, test here and see, but if, I would.
I mean, I think all that is you wouldn't pay any money and it would.
We would
be
waive
there
the
so
fee.
that
If there were a fee, we'd waive.
I'd waive the
Okay.
reporting fee.
Great, thank you. The next issue for discussion is the lister position, though I do believe this probably should be executive session because it's an employment issue.
Okay.
And I think we should move that to the executive session at the end.
Is it an employment or an appointment?
Well, it's an appointment, but we're discussing a person and their qualifications.
Oh.
So it's, you know, at least possible you'd be discussing things that should not be public.
It's a good question.
Because essentially when we appoint at the very beginning of our sessions, we're not in executive session.
It's true. I mean, I don't have any honest personal
Although it's an
objection.
elected official,
That's a little
it's a little different
but-
than a conservation commission.
This is an actual position, a paid position. Those are, well, some of those have small
And
amounts.
I'm
Of,
fine to go into executive.
I don't
session,
think it's.
but
I just feel I'm a little more
You
comfortable
need to
discussing
deliver earlier.
personnel in private. The next issue is, I don't know if it made it onto the latest agenda that came out. We do, the 100 bridge cost comparison we did already. That was really what we did earlier. But what I would like to put on as new business is the maybe bridge insurance. It occurred to me as I was going through my emails and looked at it, I said, you know, this is just something we should be as clear as possible on. And it seemed we got to a certain distance on it, but not really firmed it up as we got nervous about did we insure that bridge. What I'd really like is simply that someone on the board take on researching it a little bit to find out, are we covered by FEMA, you know, how does it work? Yes.
You skipped unscheduled members of the public, just point of information.
Okay, you're right, good point. Is there any unscheduled member who wishes to speak? All right, would you allow us to finish this little thing and then we'll come back to you? Thank you, Gloria, I'm sorry.
Did Christina get a hold of FEMA on that, John?
Yeah, Christina did not get me any further information on that.
I think FEMA should. If
So
FEMA's going to pay for the bridge, if it goes.
I would think they would cover.
That is the way Vermont League of Cities and Towns Property and Liability Division informed me. So I contacted them. I thought I shot an email around.
Yes, you
everybody.
did. I just wasn't
Okay.
100% clear having read it.
When we talk about insuring the bridge in the sense of a fire or a theft or anything
Or a
like
flood.
that, the only insurable bridge for us
I see.
is the covered bridge because of its structure. In other words, that
Mhm.
could burn and there'd
Mhm.
still be a deck. So we'd have a
Gotcha.
loss, okay?
Gotcha.
So Vermont League of Cities and Towns basically said, look, this temporary bridge, if a flood came from Sandy, which is what we're worried about, we would be going into the whole FEMA thing as if it was
Okay.
our bridge.
Okay.
So there wasn't anything more that we could do.
Okay.
And my understanding of the contract is that's a standard kind of caveat that says, we're going to drop the bridge off to you guys. You guys have somebody in place to put the bridge in. And it's on you. So if it burns up or somebody vandalizes it or a car crashes into it, it's, you know, all your responsibility. But there's no ability to insure it physically other than the flood issue, which would be FEMA. I mean, we'd have to go to FEMA for
I'm
that.
just not totally sure, to be honest. I mean, you know, I know what
Right.
you're saying, but FEMA covers replacement costs,
Right.
which they're already covering in the permanent bridge. Would they cover us for that we've rented a bridge that we're not able to replace?
Right.
So maybe a little more research, just
I think
a
it is.
little more
I'm
digging.
working on it only
Okay.
because you know what we're missing. We found the copy of the contract, but
Right.
only a section of it.
But this contract
And
is-
the board, you board members on the previous board, you thought you had some insurance on that.
I didn't think so.
Well, Dennis did, I think.
Dennis did think so. I spoke
Yeah.
to Dennis and he thought, yeah, we discussed it.
Yeah. So I'll continue that a little bit. for
Okay.
you, but-
That would
Another
be
one to
great.
check with Chris, maybe Pam Thurber from B-Trans, she's the head of the bridges for the state of Vermont.
Good
Just to
idea.
get her idea of whether,
Okay.
What happens if something happens to a temporary bridge you put in?
right, because they deal with it all the time, so.
Because
Yeah.
I really don't want us paying for suddenly having to
Especially
pay
that bridge.
$100,000 or something for.
Take it over to
Right.
scrap and get some money back.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Now, unscheduled members of the public.
All right. If I may, I'd like to go back to Neil Pelsu's resignation memo
Okay.
from being the reconciler of the town checkbook.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very disturbing that a person of his business acumen and caliber and knowledge was basically unable to reconcile the checkbook in an expedient manner. In the meantime, we have somebody running the checkbook who has considerably less training than he has had. Who did the reconciling correctly before he came in? Was it done correctly? We don't know. The other problem is that we have, at any one time, we never have an idea, is that good English? We never have an idea how much money do we have in the checking account? We get a pile of bills to be paid. The assumption is there's money in the bank for it. In the meantime, what happens are all loans that we need been contracted for. There's a bridge that's almost done that's got to be paid for. And and then with all of these problems, you take the attitude that because it's an elected position, you can't even say hello and get away with it. You've got to somehow assume responsibility for the money of the town. You've got to know where the money is, how much money you have, how much money you need, who owes you what, and what you owe to whom. You have currently, I believe, no way for any of the five of you to know what's going on. EOS.
I would like to comment on just one thing. It said, in Neil's letter doesn't say he can't reconcile it. Reconcile he could do.
Right.
And he also did find no clear things. He also did object to one thing that, strictly speaking, is simply, we discussed this at some length, and Chris can probably speak to it a bit, with the auditors. So we're aware, we're not forgetting this concern and issue at all. So that's the only thing I've been, since I came onto the board, I've been very concerned with the difficulty in our exercising anything remotely resembling financial oversight. It is an extraordinarily problematic area. And when I've stated that the treasurer, that we can't tell the treasurer what to do, that is strictly the case. We can't. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right that we need greater control, and it is something that we are continuing to focus on.
John, I maybe wouldn't use the word control so much as you say, you know, where are we?
Mm-hmm.
So the old word I hate, transparency.
Mm-hmm.
It's because, I mean, we're not controlled.
Well, I understand
Anyway,
your point
so
is well taken.
And a way that we can, you know, get somebody to do that reconciliation, I think it's steps back to his letter said, you know, if you don't have the original, if you don't have the ledger, you don't have whatever it is, but you're only getting photocopies.
That we did discuss with the auditor.
Well, I understand
All
that,
he's
but only you know.
And I'm no, but I'm saying I'm
Okay.
publicly saying it is, as what he's referring to is, as far as I know from his letter, is simply he's not seeing the physical checks. But the physical checks are part of the reconciliation. The copy that I receive, and any one of you could receive if you request it, from Maureen, does include just what banks now send all of us for our reconciliation statements, which are photocopies, both sides of the check. It would be extraordinarily difficult to fake that because it's a whole sheet of checks. And
it's done independent by the bank.
By the bank. So it's not, I just don't want things to get exaggerated beyond, we do have a problem, but I don't want it to be more than we. Now, the other thing we did talk about was, again, the problem Neil had a lot was that money moves from one account to another, and it makes it extraordinarily difficult to track it. The answer to that has always been that that's the way NEMREC works. We do have some sense that there is that's not necessary, it doesn't have to be that complicated in NEMREC, and that NEMREC could help us kind of unwind that for a price. Right. And that is something that is up to the board.
Yeah, we do have to discuss that due to the audits.
Yes.
The single audits especially. So, I mean, in a real sense, with all the FEMA stuff going on, we are going to have to get in there and have NEMREC adjust that accounting to make sure that it is perfect.
And it's, you know, just to information, when I went to a select board thing on managing money, etc., somebody from NEMREC was there. And, you know, when it was set up years ago, I think it was, NEMREC itself was pretty new. to everything. So they set it up one way and it's continues to be solidly that way, but it could be much more streamlined and accessible to other people.
I mean, we do actually, I have audit on the agenda,
Okay.
by the way, so we will come back to this as an agenda item a little later, but well said.
I just
and
also wanted to
go
say
ahead.
that the reason why we contacted Neil was because we are trying to, from a select board institute that we attended, we were instructed that a lot of select boards have their own bookkeeper, and so that's what we're attempting to do. But I don't know where we
Yeah.
are on it yet, but this is something new that we're trying to make happen, so we, and I think it's a first step.
Well-
It's been in the audit report for years
Right.
and years and years. So.
Sure.
We're not complying with one
Right.
of the reconciliation.
Manage it.
But we,
manage
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
the fact is, we didn't even have, there isn't a line item in the budget for this, you know. Hopefully in
Right.
the future we can,
Well, we would.
yeah, but we're,
One of the constraints we have, though, is that every time we meet, and we're sitting here at the end of this meeting, and we're doing pay orders, and of course the payroll, but the pay orders most especially, we don't have, you know, the current updated list that says, gee, you're signing off to pay such and such, and you don't really have any line item budget left for that. So that always tends to make me nervous that if I don't have that printout, or I don't know, I'm just
something we could,
signing
Well,
your
we-
money away.
Yeah. But we've actually, as a town, in general, on those cases, we've spent the money. It's past tense. We've contracted for the service. We can't say, you know, we're over the budget. And
Right,
we
right,
are
right.
on any individual budget item. We do have the prerogative to spend more. But I agree with you ultimately that we don't have adequate knowledge, and I agree with Gunther's statement that we do not have adequate knowledge of exactly where we stand at any given moment. I mean, there are some big, huge ticket items that really make for trouble. The education money being in the millions,
Yes.
it's actually greater, I believe, than our entire town budget.
Oh, yeah.
So then that one, whether we've just paid or are about to pay, can make it look like we have vast amounts of money when we don't, or that we have no money
Right.
when we actually do. So it's very tricky, but we do have to keep taking it on and figuring out how to
Maureen
do it.
does give us a monthly.
Yeah.
well, while we're
Printout.
at it, we haven't
Absolutely.
seen
I
it
haven't
since
seen one.
July, so how about we ask for it?
Well,
Have we?
I'm sorry, but for me, she has been giving it to
Yeah.
me.
Oh.
But she may not have been giving it to everyone. But I have been I do receive a
Okay.
monthly. She does
We would
give us
like
a
to
monthly
see that.
report. That's fine.
Yeah.
What I think
Just-
why
just
that
let me clarify. She will give Pat, or she gave Shannon, the monthly report.
Right.
Shannon made copies and gave them
Ah,
to
is that
the
what
rest of
happened?
the
Okay.
select board, and
I didn't
Shannon
know.
highlighted areas that were particularly, suddenly are 150.
The she notes. Okay.
Right.
So
Okay,
those
so
notations
Okay.
didn't come from.
Well, we could certainly
Okay.
ask, not just ask, but I'm sure that she would be glad to give Pat a copy, and Pat could make copies. I would say if we should talk a little bit about what we need highlighted, because what you would highlight is anything over 100%, and a lot of those were $25 over $100. I don't care about that as much as, $50,000 over.
You know what? It's fine. If somebody highlights it, if it's one
Okay, you can
nickel
ignore
over,
it.
you can
All
ignore
right,
it.
however you want it.
Yeah.
For me, it gives me too many things to look
Here's
at. I
what I
look
mean.
at every item
I don't think
anyway.
it needs to be highlighted, I would just like
There's
to
some
get it.
stuff in there, like with the road crew, when we budget $1,500 for truck
Right.
repairs, and the MAC cost us
Yeah,
$15,000.
there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Or we
Absolutely.
budgeted $20,000 for sand, but we are up to $35,000 because we've got to do this.
There's no question you're going to have that. If you have a really bad winter, you can go way
But,
over.
but I think that the least what we could do is ask rather than, I didn't realize you got, I started it perhaps because at one point I've always wanted the same report you want.
Yes.
So there's no reason, it's public information. The public is entitled to it for that matter.
Anyway, we know
But if we
now.
could have Pat, ask Maureen to give her a copy, and she will make each of us a copy and put it in each of our mailboxes. Then we'll all have the monthly report.
Very good.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I want to come back, Todd. I totally understand that you might end up spending 35,000 instead of 20,000, but where are we being responsible? Where's that coming from?
It comes in deficit spending. Or if you have a surplus in other places because it's in the general fund, it gets covered that way.
Yeah,
That's why, like my budget, you might be 20,000 over on winter sand, but we might be 20,000 under in bridges, so it's kind of a wash.
Right, so,
You got to look at the overall budget at the end.
yeah,
And even in truth, it could be 20,000 over.
Right.
That happens, but
but I understand, but we still, as a select board, need to know where, deficit spending, if it's not in the bank account, where's that money coming from? Maureen can't
absolutely.
have checks that are bouncing.
true. But
She usually she'll come to us and say that we're getting pretty low, or I've got to pay the school, so we're going to take out a loan for 90 days. She covers it that way until the taxes come back in to try to get us back going again.
yeah, every town each year, from my understanding of it, you may be over or under a fair amount, and that one becomes a surplus, one becomes a deficit. There's certain expenses you can't avoid. It's
Oh, I
really,
understand, yeah.
really what. So it's not quite in terms of our job is to manage the overall budget.
Well,
It's-
like last year, suddenly it looked like the planning commission had, or like 500% over in terms of
Mhm.
the,
Right,
what was it, advertisement.
but it was really an
But
error.
But it was an
a
error,
mistake.
so, we can look at that and find
Sure.
out.
The other thing, just to Gunther's point, is that this year is particularly difficult because of the money coming in and out from federal government. So we, in fact, have borrowed hundreds of thousands, actually millions, and gotten paid back a small portion of that, roughly a third, and very roughly, not for publication, but so that makes it even harder to know where do you stand. But I utterly agree that transparency is the goal, and that the starting point is that every member should have the monthly report and be able to peruse it and go over it and raise questions about it if there are issues of
Actually,
why are we over
every
here?
department should have it. The lister should have it, Gloria should have it, the zoning administrator should, so that they can look and say, all right,
Yeah.
Right, good
I'm getting
point.
pretty close to the end of my budget, even if it's only their sheet.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
should be looking at it.
That's a
too.
good idea. So
If they
Pat,
get
if you
close,
could-
then we can say, they come to us and say, I need some more money, what are we gonna do? And by just us having it and not saying anything to them, it's
It's a
not.
fair, good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So I think that would be useful if you could make, not of the whole thing, but of just the listers page and the town clerk's page and the road crews.
Both what's come in as income and
Yeah.
of both the revenue and.
I also think that Maureen would appreciate the help of the select board in helping her manage what in this case is probably close to $5 million from FEMA and everything else involved. It's a hell of a job for one person, unassisted, to handle that kind of money.
Very much.
Well,
Especially as varied as the budget is.
well, we are. That's what we're trying to do.
But you got to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And you can't say, I'm
Wait,
elected.
whoa,
go away."
whoa, Gunther,
Yeah.
Please.
And the other thing is that
order.
it used to be just, Maureen doing that once a month, but the legislature passed that it's a requirement now that we get a report once a month
Oh,
from
okay, I didn't know that.
the most recent legislation.
Where are we on the processes, or is that coming up somewhere?
What?
Finding a replacement for Neil?
Well, when the audit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. We will now move forward to, I had asked Pat to put on the agenda the alternate project that we do need to, so it's new, or maybe I asked you at the last minute, so I guess it didn't get, if you printed out your agenda,
Yes.
you might not
It's under
have
old
it.
business.
If you,
Yeah, we had.
well, I'm just
I'm
looking
on the old
over your
one.
shoulder.
Okay, sorry.
So,
The one
so we do have, there are a couple things that I would like to get on the air in terms of the meeting that will now be held on the 8th. The first is I am very concerned that sometimes people seem to be throwing around information that is not necessarily correct, and it needs people. If I would ask any townsfolk, anyone watching the film, I would ask members of the select board, if people make a statement, and sometimes in our town people will make statements while slamming their hand on the table and as if to give it extra truth. Ask them where the information comes from. The specific was that I got a note, and I won't go into where it came from or who said it, that they had heard from someone who works for the town that we can't sell the property if we buy it. I was like, where did that come from? And it might have come from the old information that if FEMA bought it out, then it would be green space in perpetuity. But this property, in fact, that then causes me to have to contact Jim Barlow and get DLCT's input on it. And I do have the information that no, of course, if we take that land, if we purchase that land for the purpose of our purpose, which has to do with, in fact, abandonment of a highway is a specific reason that is covered literally in the statute. We, of course, do have the right to sell it. The other number, I've heard various and sundry numbers about how much we make in tax revenue from the property. There is a figure, I think that it's public information, but I'm not going to just state it here, but please make sure that that when people say numbers, that they're accurate numbers and people aren't, just hold them a little bit to fact. And because otherwise we get all these things floating around, and then when we get to the meeting, we're going to have people saying, hey, we're going to lose $200,000. It's like, wait a minute, how did they get it? So it's just we want it to be facts. And as someone said to me recently, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. Everybody has to we have to stick to what's true. So that's all. That was a concern of mine as we go into a very important meeting.
And I think with that meeting, which has been recessed, by the way, just point of information.
Yeah.
We did meet. I took minutes. We recessed, and then we'll reconvene at the Newburgh Fire Station at 6 p.m. on November 8th. But the emphasis on that is it will not be talking about the alternate projects. That meeting is for one article only, which is, will we be allowed to purchase the 14th Lynch Bridge, whatever is written out there. So our moderator is very aware of that, and we're not going to be answering alternate project questions because we're bringing up different town business that wasn't warned.
Well, I will leave the moderating personally to the moderator. I would just think, in all honesty, I would demur a little bit on what you just said, Gloria. I do think the town is entitled to discuss that we're asking them to spend money in expectation of getting a benefit, and I think it would be reasonable to discuss what it is the benefit is that they would get. Right. That's my opinion. I'm not the moderator.
And she is the moderator.
She is the moderator. But I'm just stating my opinion that I think it is a reasonable thing to discuss.
There's always that bottom section where it says in any other.
Well, actually, there isn't. There's no other business. But in answering the question, do you want to spend this money? Do you want to spend this money? I think you would say, why do you want to spend the money? Right. And then we're a little bit on the hook to say what it is we think we would get in return. I mean, let me just finish. Without saying we're not discussing it as in you should spend it on this and you shouldn't spend it on that, or you should spend it on this. And that's people can come to our meetings and discuss that anytime. It's not even necessarily at that time. But if they want to discuss why we're asking for the money, to me but again, as Gloria says, it is absolutely correct. It is the moderator's job to handle the discussion, not ours, thank goodness. I will be very pleased not to be chairing that meeting.
So we're going to, it seems like, I guess what I was, here's my, just like mind surfing here. First thought was, you know, even when I was talking about the alternate project with Mr. Garvey recently, he, who has been at almost every meeting and has heard us talk about it, you know, didn't understand something that I thought was important for the, you know, the situation about the project. And so I guess what I'm thinking is, one thought that I had was, should we have something that actually spells out all of the points, you know, that we hand out, so people understand, because look at how hard it has been for all of us to just hold on to all of this picture. And
So moved.
well,
I mean, I really think we should have. I absolutely agree with you.
but then we were just saying that maybe we're not even going to talk about it.
But it'll be ready for the time when we do talk about it.
Are we having a hearing?
Well, there's been a motion. There has not so far been a second. I'm not hearing a second. We'll just continue discussing. I'm a little anxious and a little nervous about that, only because how each of us would word such a thing could be, one could want this emphasized and another could want that emphasized. What I would think would be particularly valuable would be the section of the statute that says what is an eligible project. Even though it's on the website, but I think that would be a useful thing to have multiple copies
There are some
available.
bullet points that are factual.
Yeah, I put that on the website.
The only problem is the exact content of that. We would have to decide tonight,
Yeah.
because this is our last time. I would put it slightly differently. Any one of us, right, has you don't lose your freedom of speech because you're a select person. So any one of us could write up what you think are the most critical points, or any two of us, not any three of us, but any two of us could write up what you think are the most, not coming from the select board, but coming as these are what the key points that you think people should keep in mind. You have a voice, and if you want to put it on paper, it's your right to do so. But for us to do it as a select board, we would then have to agree on the wording, and we could be here till 3 a.m. doing so. And that's my opinion,
Okay.
but that's not a...
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
I definitely think it would be useful to have the what are eligible projects, multiple copies of that printed up. You know, so that
I've got
people...
it on.
Yeah.
I know you have it on 8.4, but so people could look at it
No,
during
but
the
what I'm
meeting.
saying is I could just.
Run off a few. That would be terrific. I think that would be very helpful for people, because I think that's been a big area of confusion, what it's available. The next thing relation to that, do we have any? We don't have anything further, I take it, on the adjoining property. Rich hasn't looked with you yet. Has he rescheduled with you when to look?
Well, I think we're going to do it Thursday before the meeting.
Why? He doesn't want to take. Okay.
But we will have had a look-see from him prior to the meeting.
Just prior to the meeting, unfortunately. I would like
Yeah.
it to be a little bit more than 10 minutes before the meeting, but what it is.
I think it might be a couple hours.
All right, a couple hours is pretty
Oh,
good.
that's
Okay.
really good.
Oh, good. All right, thank you. That's all that I have on that topic. The second odd thing, related, or not directly related, but the second thing to just say to mostly for the public's information, is that FEMA did give us an initial rejection of our attempt to, change the scope of a project. And this isn't something that should have been, according to Christina, essentially straightforward, that there is a kind of tightening going on at FEMA, and so as a consequence, they are tending to reject first and force us to appeal. Yes, that's...
Which, I'm getting
I am talking
confused
about
on
this.
1 and 2. Yeah, so this is 2. Is this the same one that SVE is engineering?
No.
Thank
no,
you.
no.
Okay.
This is, yes, thank
It's
you.
small
No,
one.
I put in my note, 2, question mark. Yes, this is the second, the
Okay.
smaller Hunter Bridge.
It just needs a deck and railing. Doesn't need anything else.
Okay.
Okay, and Christine was saying that we definitely should appeal. What do you have, Todd? Do you have a sense of the approximate cost? Very approximate. Within, it's like we're talking.
We were talking originally, like, I want to say, we had a price from Renault Brothers, and it seemed like it was either 68 or 70.
So it's around that
Yeah.
range, and
I'd
so
say between 68 and 76,000, somewhere in there.
because what FEMA is permitting is about 20,000.
Yeah, I don't understand that, because they approved us when we sent the Renault estimate in. Of course, it was Charles.
Yes.
And Charles told us that looked good, go ahead with it. And then the next thing we find out is they only put 15,000 down instead of 76 or whatever it was, 68 or.
What confuses me about this letter is, if anything different from the improved project scope is constructed, it may result in the de-obligation for the total
Right.
amount
Right.
of the project
Correct.
work. That means we won't give you anything?
That's right. That's what that means.
That's what I thought I read.
Means.
I
That's
wanted
what
to
that means.
Really didn't
They're
figure it
playing.
clear.
They're definitely FEMA is really definitely playing hardball on this topic.
So my understanding from this letter is we could do improved projects simultaneously with the appeal.
Yes.
What I'm unclear about is, it sounds like the way Christina's running it in her little email, if we do the improved project, it's a trap. So how would we be able to appeal and get into a trap at the same time?
Well,
'Cause if we lose
according
the appeal,
according to FEMA's letter,
which one will it take?
it's according to FEMA's letter. I wish I made a copy for myself here, but I did not.
Is it this one?
Yeah, let me take a look. But according to their letter, yeah, you can go ahead and you can do both. You can do the appeal and move toward an improved project simultaneously. The issue, understand the issue with an improved project is FEMA only pays up to the amount they obligate.
Right.
So what improved means is we're agreeing as the town to take on the additional expense.
Right.
So if they're approving approximately 20,000 and we spend 70,000, the $50,000 comes from the town. So that they make both. If you put together FEMA's letter and the state's letter, again, we're definitely between a rock and a hard place, because there's the issue of if we do a lesser project, the state says you're not meeting our requirements. So we're going to need Christina's help in a serious way. I really don't want to try to resolve it tonight. It's more to discuss it and make the public aware of it, and then next meeting we're really going to have to spend some time on it.
We're ticking
Yeah.
right now, because the
60
appeal's it's 60 days.
60
so
days.
It's not that, but
60 days
then
from this letter,
if
from
we
today.
put the appeal in, then that kind of stops the clock.
Right. We should, no, let me put it slightly differently. I can see you're right. There's no reason we wouldn't appeal.
Right.
There's nothing lost in appealing, and we should appeal.
Absolutely.
So, and Christine says we should appeal. So, is it Christine or Christina?
Christina.
I went to
Christine.
Christine.
She's
I know. I was Christina, but then someone in the audience said Christine. I lost. Anyway, bottom line, Christina says we should appeal. So I think there's nothing lost in appealing. An improved project is a whole other kettle of
What
fish.
she's sort of saying on this one, don't
Even do. So let's go forward with authorizing my suggestion to the board is that we
Yes.
go forward on authorizing Christina to file an appeal on our behalf, and then we can get some more input from her and from the state on some way of handling this situation. Does that seem a reasonable approach?
Do we need a motion for that one?
I don't think we do. We've been using Christina to just do these things, but I will send her an email to say to submit an appeal. Okay. That brings us to cell towers. And Bruce, well, you might want to wait till you hear, though you seem to be a step ahead of me in this regard. We did receive today by FedEx a notice, a 45-day notice and request for recommendation pursuant to 30 article, I don't know if it's an article, to 30 VSA 248A parentheses E. And we received I made a copy for myself, and you can probably, what we can probably do is ask Pat to make a copy of this. You know, the whole packet isn't, I don't think the board will be in Pat's hands and anyone can review it at any time. It's really, I'm going to hand it to her now. The cover letter is really has the heart of the things concerning us. And basically what, I read through this carefully before the meeting, and what it boils down to is this. AT&T is proposing and will be proposing to the state regulatory authorities and is asking the town to grant it permission to do. They are asking us, as opposed to simply telling us. They do lay out how what they're doing relates to our bylaws, and I just want to make sure people are aware of it. They are talking about building a tower at the location which is 66 Oak Hill in Newfane. They had sent us earlier a notice that they were sending up a balloon. What the balloon test is for is that people can see where the tower will be. Unfortunately, they sent it, as an email to the board. How many townspeople then knew to go look to see whether they could see the balloon? But that's what they did. It is a monopole telecommunications tower, 130 feet above ground. It would have 12 panel antennas, each measuring approximately 96 inches. What is that in yards? Is that 4 yards? 5 yards? 4? 12? I don't know. 12, 4, I think that's, no, I can't do the math in my head, sorry. By 12 by 6. So it's about 12 inches wide, 6 inches wide, 12 inches deep, and 96 inches in length.
96 inches.
96 inches.
What is, how,
8 feet.
Yeah,
So that's
what
why I
is-
couldn't do it in yards. I'd get 3 and, what is that, 3 2/3 yards. So it's not 8 feet. It's a simpler 8 feet, isn't it? Sorry. And the total, that's at 130 feet. The tower itself is 4 feet above ground. So it's really 134 feet above ground level. These other details I will skip, though you're obviously, we'll get, I'll get copies of all of this, because they are lesser than the tower itself. It goes into a project description. It concludes in the packet that Pat will have construction drawing, and if the public would like to look at that packet, you're quite welcome to that. There's nothing, it's public information. Photographic simulations, propagations map, an authorization letter, equipment, maximum permissible exposure report, tower report, wetlands report. And the critical thing from the board's perspective, Town of Newfane zoning bylaws. And what they say, they did review it, they meet our standards according to them. I mean, we should be sure that we're comfortable with it, but they meet it in terms of insurance and speculation, co-location, noise, lighting, radio frequency emissions, and aesthetics, wildlife habitat, and removal. Where they do not meet the ordinance this is their, again, I'm not concluding this, I'm simply reading their interpretation, but they acknowledge that the height of the tower is taller than our ordinance would normally permit, because the average tree line is approximately 60 feet at that point, and this tower is 134 feet tall. And the setback distance is less than the amount that we require in our ordinance. So in both those things, the setback is more about falling over. They make various statements about the safety of the thing, despite that it's designed to collapse, to fold in on itself, not fall over. Probably the thing that is most, I'm interpreting a little bit, but the thing I think that is probably most concern is the height of the tower, that it is 130 to 134, actually really 134 feet at the tip, with the trees around it being 60 feet. So that's the latest on the AT&T tower.
So would they have to apply for variances on the height and the setback?
Well, in a sense, this probably constitutes that. I mean, they probably may have to file a form, but they're telling us so that they are going to request that. So, I mean, we have to be. This
And
is
so that
probably
would go
as
to the
much.
zoning administrator, rejected to the DRB?
I don't know. Is that the way it works?
We don't have anything
Yes.
in the zoning bylaws on that. We
It's
have
not.
we
It's
have
an
a
ordinance.
wireless
Yeah,
ordinance.
I think
So
Gloria
that's a
is correct. I don't think
I
it's.
think it all comes back to the select board.
Yeah, I think it does come
Okay.
back to
Because
us.
it's an
Okay.
ordinance and it's
Yes,
not
I think you're right.
Okay.
It was originally a part of there was a wireless codicil in the zoning, but it was taken out of zoning and put as a separate ordinance. So it really is a select board decision.
Not that I wouldn't like,
Well,
Ryan to
that's-
have input. but
Right,
it's-
and we might request
but
it.
there
He
is-
might
there
need
would
that
be-
on setbacks, right?
Well, the setback, I don't think it's a setback, it may. I don't know whether the setback is or is not. I wouldn't care to state in terms of zoning, but it definitely is not an adequate. It may well be okay for zoning. It's not, because it's the height of the thing relative to the distance.
Does every board member have a copy of the wireless telecommunications?
You should.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you do. I don't know who has copies of what. It's been.
Where- Yeah, John, maybe we have
I,
a
in fact-
pause.
Mhm.
I think that came up with a previous select board, so probably you and I have one, but.
No, I understand. I'm not saying.
So-
I think each select board member kind of has to. I don't want to say to copy everything to Pat. If you check whether you have it, if you don't.
That's
ask
why I
Pat
asked
to
the
make
question.
A copy.
Right.
Yeah.
No, in general, for a while we couldn't find a copy.
Right,
yeah,
so
what
I will
happened
be
is-
getting a copy of that, yeah?
Yeah.
That particular binder that Pat has the ordinances in
Mhm.
has now been organized with a divider, so you can find it easily and be able
Yeah.
to.
But you can certainly,
Yeah.
come through and make copies of everything you wish, or ask Pat to, depending on her workload. But the bottom line is, those two things they acknowledge are outside the ordinance. So we will definitely want public input on it, and then we are going to have to, as a select board, come to a decision about whether we feel the need to have the tower outweighs the issues that are raised by having the tower. Given all that, and Bruce, the fact that you've already sent us a letter in reference to this and have waited until we got to it, which I very much appreciate, perhaps you'd like to say something.
Yes, I certainly would. I've been on the Conservation Commission since 1998, and the issue of cell towers first came up, according to my notes, in 2000. And I actually wrote the interim ordinance that was adopted by the Select Board when they first had that issue come up. And then after that, it lapsed, and the Select Board eventually got a more recent and up-to-date ordinance and passed it. And the last I heard about it was when they passed an ordinance in 1990, in 2007.
Right.
Is that the same one?
That is
you
this
have?
ordinance. It's adopted February 15th and effective April 16th of
Right.
2007.
And because that met the concerns of the Conservation Commission, we didn't say anything more about it. I got a copy of it and everybody was happy. And I'd just like to point out a couple of things. One is, in that ordinance on page 6, it says, it says on paragraph 11, the facility will not unreasonably interfere with the view of any public park, natural scenic vista, historic building or district, or major view corridor. And the Conservation Commission, from the very beginning of this issue of cell towers, has always been concerned because when we built the trail system in the town forest, it goes up the hill to a lookout, and the lookout is the focal point of the trail system. And one of the reasons why anybody in his right mind would go on this trail system, so they can go to the lookout where we've got a bench and they can see a nice little vista. And I'm concerned that this tower is going to be visible and wreck up our vista. And the vista has changed over time. It's gotten overgrown since we put it in 2000, it's 12 years. Some periodically it gets a little overgrown, and then we clear it out. And we actually just cleared it out this year to improve the view. And not knowing this was going to come up, I didn't take photos of it. But I do have, for those of you who've never happened to hike on this, have a photograph of what the vista looks like. So I'd like to just pass it out, so people can see why are we getting upset to have a cell tower here. We're getting upset because somebody might come to our trail system and they hike an hour to get to our lookout, and they get to the lookout, and what do they see? They see a cell tower. Well, that's not what we intended to do when we created the trail system. I don't know how many of you have actually hiked on it, but I have our brochure which shows a map where the trail system is. So if you want to check on it. So I am number one. I'm concerned that it would be visible from our vista, and the photo I have is not the whole thing. The photo is looking at our vista from one angle. If you went over to the left, you'd maybe see more of the hills than is in that photograph. I didn't do the photograph intending to take the whole thing. But it seems to me that it's a very good likelihood that the tower might be visible from there. So that's one objection that we would have to it. Another objection is a cell tower is supposed to be put on page 6, paragraph 9, that they can build a cell tower if it can't be reasonably co-located. And the point of co-location is we don't want to have the rolling hills of Newfane spiked with cell towers hither and yon, so that it looks like a big industrial area. And the theory behind co-location in cell tower construction is put them all in one place, hopefully a place that will have good reception and have good height and work well, but also then you've only got one tower, and they all put their stuff together in one spot, so you don't have a tower here and a tower there. This seems to me to be a very unlikely place for a tower, and certainly not a good example of co-location. When we were discussing the original cell tower ordinance, we were saying, well, we've got a radio transmitter up on the top of Newfane Hill. Nobody's ever objected to it. Gets good reception, has good height. Why don't they put the towers up there? That's the logical place. Nobody's going to object to it. There's already a tower there. That makes sense. This one here, because they're putting it at a relatively low place, that's why it has to be 130 feet up in the air. Whereas, maybe if they put it up on the top of the hill where the radio tower is, it wouldn't have to be. But it certainly seems to me that putting it down in that location, they're just asking to have more towers, because it's clearly only going to be good for Route 30, points north, points west, points south. It's probably not going to be able to cover, because I don't think it's high enough. So I think there's a serious problem with co-location. And the last problem that I see with it is I think it's too near other houses. And I imagine you might get the people who live in that area. This is an area that has a bunch of houses around it. So it does seem to me that it might be detrimental to the neighbors. So I would just like to throw that in. So that's why as soon as I heard about this, I wanted to make you folks be aware that we've been following this issue since 2000, and since it hasn't come up in 12 years, we thought, well, maybe we're out of the woods, but we definitely have a lot of concerns about it.
Okay. Any questions for Bruce? Or?
Well, I was just curious, how is it detrimental as far as being near other houses?
Because if it collapses, it could endanger them. If it catches on fire, it could endanger them. They have to build an access road to it, so it could cause erosion. It could be detrimental to them aesthetically, where once they had a nice view and now they're looking out, they may have constructed a bay window so it looks out at the beautiful hills, and now they're looking out at the cell tower. So it could be a lot of things that I think the neighbors might object to. So anyway, those are our thoughts, and we would love to have notice of any or hear about whatever else is going on, and we'd love to put in input on it because it's something that we've been concerned about since day one.
Right. Well, I would just say in terms of notice, I don't believe, I may be wrong, but I don't believe we need to hold a public hearing on this explicit topic. However, what I would say on the other hand is we do post our agenda.
Right.
We will be continuing to discuss it, and we will be deciding it as a select board whether we will grant permission and or alternatively whether we'll say this violates our ordinance and we will not grant permission. So you're obviously always welcome at the select board meetings, and probably this will be a repeated topic over the next few weeks, I should say, probably more likely, till we may come to a decision. And so you and any other members of the public are, of course, welcome to express themselves.
Yes, and just beyond that, if the board hears of things like tests, like another balloon test or something, we would love to have somebody out so that we can look at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, well, I don't even know. I didn't even realize honestly what it meant. But one of the things you could do, just as a point of thought, and since you're into doing the pictures, one possibility is you could simulate a balloon test yourself. You probably could send up a balloon 130 feet from a location near 66 Oak. You can't go onto their property without their permission, but near it, see where it, take a picture, see what, go to your top of your lookout and see where you see it. I mean, just a thought.
I wish we had a balloonist on the commission. It would be great.
Well, the helium balloon probably get anyway. It's a thought. Maybe it's silly.
It's something that we would want to see
Because
how it impacts.
well, all I'm saying is that when we try to make a decision, when we're not going to make one tonight, we're just getting it on the table. We will really want to have facts and evidence that say, as opposed to it may do this or it may do that, or the neighbor may like this or they may not, or it may be visible. We'd want to know it is visible from your visit. It is not visible. We'd like the information to make us as informed decision as we can.
Could we ask
We
them
would
to come
too.
and do another balloon test so that we have people who could be in place? I mean, I almost got the impression from the emails that it was going to happen this day and then it happened the next day.
It was almost
It was-
immediate. It was like,
yeah, it was terribly confusing.
we certainly can ask whether they will comply is another, it's very interesting how they've done this, very honestly, in that we've been begging for to get the other side of this, we have been begging for cell phone coverage. We've got no response from AT&T. They have not been willing to come forward. Then all of a sudden, we're building it. So it really is we're a little blindsided. We can definitely ask them to perform another balloon test and give us a little more advance notice, so that we could determine it. I think that's a quite I think it's reasonable, but
Should we forward this to Steve Morris? Have him look at it?
sure,
Since I was on
absolutely, because
cell tower
Steve
committee
didn't
for
know.
the
Steve
state,
didn't know about this.
Then he's part of that
Yep.
committee.
So you know what I think, Pat? I asked you to make copies, but instead of that, if you could scan it, the cover letter, not the whole thing, but the 9-page cover letter, and send an electronic copy to all members of the board and to Stephen Morse. That would be. I don't know if there's anybody else we would want to.
Could we
make
also,
sure.
because Bruce is
Anybody?
the chair of the Conservation
Sure,
Commission?
of course, absolutely.
Can I have your
Why not?
email
Yeah.
address?
Absolutely,
The,
absolutely.
I guess, I mean, you're opening up other questions, like, I mean, does this one location, does it cover all of Newfane? You know, what does, is it going to require that
Right.
having another one? Is it
Yeah.
actually true
No, those are
that
good
there's
questions.
another location where it would only be, there'd be one and it would cover all of Newfane?
I think it's just going to get cell phone coverage to my house, which is really what I'm
Yeah, so
concerned
that's the
about.
problem.
But in any case, these are questions we're really going to have to give it some real consideration, because it is, first of all, it is in clear violation. They admit it themselves as of our ordinance. So we're going to have to. On the other hand, we have some real problems, and I have to say for myself, Bruce, as much as you might hope it's gone away because it's been so many years. On the other hand, a lot of us, and I think of Todd and the emergency service, have been pulling our hair out. In particular, that's why I lost most of mine,
Yeah.
by the fact that we don't have cell coverage. So it's a really one of these trying to weigh the issue and seeing what solutions there are.
Good, I appreciate it.
Can I ask a couple of very quickies
Yeah.
on this? Don't we have a 150-foot limit on the cell tower in the ordinance?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
but
they-
that's
they-
not
they
the
have.
problem.
So
It's
that's
only
134.
134.
We have a double fall zone, right?
Yes, and
Okay. We have basically invisible from the road, and it has to be on a paved road because it's commercial.
I don't think it has to.
No,
But-
not anymore.
Let me hold you a little bit, Gunther. You're totally welcome to get the copy of the ordinance and read it. I just don't want to take our time to
I thought it
what's
was
in
the
the
same
ordinance,
one we
what's
wrote.
not in the
He
ordinance.
spent 1,000,000 years on the planning commission with
Okay.
this.
Well, I'm just
bylaws.
saying.
I'm
I'm
just thinking
I'm wanting to
about-
move
And the
ahead.
only other thing quickly, does the federal government overrule our...
I don't believe Stephen did not think so.
Okay.
Stephen did not. It's not so much federal as state. And Stephen did not. Stephen wasn't firm on that. Stephen
the
Morris,
guy-
but he did not think the state would simply say you must have it, because for one thing, we're not talking about if it were Interstate 91, then that might be true. But that was what at least his initial, but he was not absolutely certain.
sounds good.
Okay, this is our first round of it. Thank you. The next, do we have, Pat, an update on the reflectors in the right-of-way
Yes,
issue?
I spoke with the Secretary of State, and they said because we have sent out a letter and warned them that is in the right-of-way, he felt, and he did spell it out, but I said, so you think we should contact an attorney? And he said, if you can't get them down with letters, yes.
I have a different question on this. Can't we just if they're in our right-of-way, can't we simply remove them? I don't know how it works. I mean, they don't have a right.
Civil action with the person doing that, if, that's the reason to do the attorney. Maybe.
It defies common sense. If somebody came and put something in my lawn, I'd just take it out.
Well, but it's her, it's a right of way, so it's her reflectors. So if we take possession of her reflectors, I think you might have an argument. I think.
All right. Well, I would certainly contact an attorney before we did it, but it seems to me the simplest. If she won't take them out, we take them out.
I think another letter would be a very good thing, a very pointed letter to her that says, if you do not remove them, we will take legal action.
Well, Pat, didn't you draft a
Don't you think
letter?
that the
Is that,
first big snow we
you
had,
drafted a
we're
letter
gonna-
about something, I'm sorry, was that
You
about this?
drafted a letter on the trash.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm just thinking that we did set up the dynamic that, and the Perrys were right. I mean, the road's been kind of encroaching on their property, and we're letting them put something there. They know full well that if something gets damaged, they're gonna be legally responsible. Why don't we just, I mean, if I were this other landowner and read that in the minutes, then I would say, well, why can't I? Because the landowner felt that the road crew had the grading of, and, you know, right or wrong, this was the reason they put them up. So we just write a letter that states that they are in the right of way. If there's any damage done to them by plowing or anything, that's her responsibility. If it damages a car, then she's gonna be legally liable, because that's the same setup we did for the Perrys. They'll be legally liable if something happens, and they were willing to take on that responsibility. And then we stop this kind of a back and forth match and say we're gonna take legal action against you based on what?
The concern with this one, unlike the Perry issue, is that the complaints that have been coming before individual members of the board, that the traffic coming along there is moving into the center of the road, toward the other lane, because of where the reflectors are. And that's a huge concern of involvement.
Would that be any difference from what the Perrys would be?
Yes, because they're not,
But
it's
isn't a mailbox?
not an
A
encroachment.
mailbox could be in a location like that also. Correct? Would somebody move to the middle of the road because of that?
Well, a mailbox is
There are state statutes for mailboxes too.
right, and the
Okay.
postal
Because
service usually checks
When we
that.
plow, every now and then we hit one,
Uh-huh.
and they want us to replace the mailbox. So we go over to the post office, get the copy that says, you know, how high it's gonna be, how far off the road it's
Yeah,
gonna be.
but all I'm saying is there are some mailboxes that are on the edge of the road like these reflectors are. And so I'm just sort of saying, does a mailbox on the side of the road force somebody to move to the center
It's a
of the
little
road?
different when you're looking at an expanse of a couple hundred feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, Priscilla? It's,
I
I
do
drove up-
understand.
I drove up and down by there. You know, in terms of my driving, I would never have been driving over there. I would have had to pulled over had a truck come at me the other direction. But I didn't have any problem. And then going back to mailboxes, it's like my set of mailboxes on Wiswell Hill Road, we couldn't have mailboxes to meet the specs of the federal highway because we've got a gully there.
I mean, what we're doing is sort of weighing how, you know, going into something legal, if it's really worth it. I mean, I guess my first thought, and I'm not kidding, is with the first good snow, they're going to be gone.
Yeah.
You know, if we have a good snow this year.
Have one next week.
Yeah, I mean,
Tonight, maybe.
But I agree. Yeah.
and is it?
Are we just, you know, dealing with irritations, and I understand, you know, different people are complaining, but that other stuff hasn't been in the way for people to complain enough, you know, up at Perry's, if you don't know. I just think that, yeah, let nature take
I mean,
its
these.
course.
Yeah, I know.
The only problem with that is next spring, it's probably gonna be all back up again for the summer. So,
well, I don't really have a problem with the reflectors. It's just they're down into the road. If they were up toward, the edge of the lawn, I don't think it'd be as big of a concern. But it's up to the board. You're right. They're going to go at the first snow. But my only concern with it is we have had complaints. There are people complaining. That's the whole purpose of the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, the person complaining in the Perry case was not public.
Right.
It was the Perrys who are, it's coming up into their front door stoop. If we should start getting complaints at the top of the four-way junction, we would have to address that as well. My concern is for traffic safety, passing and repassing on that roadway.
I'd rather our attorney dealt with the other things that we're asking him to take care of now. But
That's why I suggest that, you know, we could send one more letter to the board. These are in the right of way, and they need to come down.
to the
Or
property
push, or move back onto the property.
just say this is what we're doing.
Right.
I think so. I think that's a good one.
Okay, I don't think it'll do any, I mean, I don't think.
It might
so.
not, but
Yeah.
the point is, the
It's
board
okay.
will be enforcing its
Okay.
own.
All right, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
Says who wants to draft said letter? I feel Chris has taken on a few things. I don't really want to
Thank
keep
you.
loading her.
I'm not quite sure, in that last 20 seconds, I kind of lost your thought. I've drafted, Chris, if you remind me of what you just said.
Okay. Will do.
Maybe there's another way of coming at it. I mean, one of the things that was upsetting was the complaint from neighbors. You know, that sort of threw off the discussion. It seemed right off the bat.
So she wanted names of
Yeah.
neighbors.
Which we
Right.
wouldn't do anyway, but
So maybe we can sort of instead be much more legal about it or something. You know, catch my drift.
how about that one person takes on writing a letter and brings it to the next board meeting?
Mhm.
And that person might be Gloria. I really serious that I think, Chris, you've taken on a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I'll
Could
be
be.
happy to draft
Oh,
a brief,
Pat,
brief
okay.
letter
Great.
and
Give us
and,
something
and
we've
have
talked
you look at it. And if you want it to go, my suggestion is give her a date to have them down, and say if they aren't down by this date, we will be forced to.
But see, that's the
That's
quest.
the
That's what
different
we're
kind of
sort of.
technical
We're trying to
knowledge
take a
that
step
Okay.
quieter than
Why
that.
don't I draft it?
All right,
Okay.
it's fine. Let Gloria draft it, and then we
I'll
can
talk
talk
to
about
you.
it. We want to give it teeth. That if those reflectors aren't out of the ground, I'm gonna come
Well,
there.
wait a minute. Let's do this.
You okay?
We can stop at the point. Actually, she's got more time than you do. You're doing
Yeah.
elections. I've got a
I agree.
boatload. That's what she does.
Good
Let's
point.
amend this. Draft a letter.
Okay.
Okay, Pat? What we will do is say, look, the statutes say, and we can enclose that. It says
Yep, we
you can't encroach, and I think you've looked that one up.
Right, you did.
You've got it. Attach that to it, okay? Also indicate in the letter that if any damage is done to the reflectors or any damage is caused as a result of the reflectors, that it will be her responsibility. That we expect as the board to have those down, but in any case, you know, if they're
If
damaged,
she
they're,
doesn't.
yes, they're your problem, and if any damage occurs as a result of this, it's your problem as well.
All right, but and are you saying just draft it and send it, or are you saying I think
We'll
it'd be
look at it.
we'll look at
We'll
it.
look
Great.
at it, Pat.
Okay.
Refine it up, but that's
Perfect.
the genesis
Perfect.
of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. So do we have a motion? We don't need a motion to
No,
that
no,
effect.
just
Okay, terrific. Next is the audit, based on, and what, the number one topic that I have is still the reconciliation, someone who is willing, because now, you know, whereas at least Neil did look over everything, and I will say I actually looked over everything. The actual what's odd about the way things are is actual reconciliation of the numbers is the least of things, because all of that is done by, you know, NEMREC sums it up automatically, and the bank sums it up automatically, and you know, they find some item that's out, and that brings it together. That's not the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is really, number one, the checks. I looked at every check. Just to make, because when we talked to the auditors, they said the most common way this is done, the person just writes themselves their own check. There was an electronic funds transfer. I had no idea what that would have been about. There are 3 direct deposits. I don't know enough to know who they went to, and you would want somebody who could follow those 3 things.
One of the guys at work has direct
No, I assume it's just people's checks going through, but I don't have any way to know
Right.
what they are. So the bottom line is we really do, I'm just saying I did do that for the last month so that at least there's some looking at it. But, and as Gloria and I went to the same seminar, one of the things they say is that just the mere knowledge that somebody's going to look at these stuff often would stop anybody who might, I bet I could, from doing anything. But we really need someone to do this work. And have we made any progress on
The other point is that we can't have someone do it. We need to have someone do it, and we can't have. It has to be someone who can't sign checks.
Right, correct.
I mean, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I dropped the ball. I noticed when I was reading the minutes that I was to talk to Marilyn Distelberg,
Right.
and I forgot to.
Okay.
So
So
I will.
that
contact
does
her.
seem important to at least see if she would be willing.
Could we also? I mean, how about if you ask her,
Mhm.
and just so that this doesn't wait for another meeting,
Mhm.
you ask her, and if that doesn't work, that I maybe contact other select boards and find out who they're using to do this kind
Well,
of
I
thing?
would say simultaneous because the odds are Marilyn will not be able to do it
But
at the rate we can pay her.
Well, I was going to say, are we going to keep it to the 1350? Do I ask her and say, could you give us, once she gets going, an hour, and she might charge, I don't know what she charges for 4 columns per hour.
I'm sure it's a lot more than $13.50, but maybe Gloria start by seeing if she's interested in doing it. Period, and
Yeah.
then we could get into the money. And what I would say is, at the same time, contact if you could do that, because she may or may not. Just simply, she may or may not work out. She may or
Okay.
may not won't do it for a price we feel comfortable with, and we'd really like to know if we could find some other sources, some possibilities. Then we can decide what makes the most sense.
Okay.
So I'll do that. I'll
All
talk
right,
to
so-
Marilyn tomorrow.
So Gloria will talk to Marilyn, and Priscilla will check with other select boards to see if you can get a lead on somebody who could do that for us. Great. Next item, now, there were more things from the audit, one of which we can consider when we meet on the budget, which is the NEMREC budgeting, the NEMREC reorganization. The problem being that we're now talking about fiscal year 2014. So it's not till wouldn't start that money. It's hard to get your head around that. But
Start July 1st.
it doesn't start till July 1st of 2013. So it's a ways off. But we certainly can do that, and as part of our budget process. The question is whether we should think. And I know Maureen was here and said, she doesn't want anybody touching before the, moving things around as, between now and year end, though we could nevertheless
You
bring
mean
them,
fiscal year end?
yeah, which is
Does-
not until
Does the
July.
treasurer have a miscellaneous budget for her operations?
Very small.
So it wouldn't be enough to do that?
No.
Okay.
Though I've already thought we should spend money on, and I'm not sure which budget line it should come out of getting some more training for Pat so that she understands the NEMRAC system. And one of the other things that came up was there really should be a read-only NEMRAC to access to the full thing. What she gives Pat is essentially access to create some reports, but not really full access. So I still think that would be valuable to be able, again, it's another set of eyes, somebody else who begins to understand the system. And I don't know what we might have that budget that
There is a
under.
free one coming up. I wanted to talk to you about that. It's
That's
next
it.
week.
Yeah,
Well, you
that-
definitely should do that.
Yeah.
It's in Rutland.
Oh, well, that is a little different. That I actually have on the agenda, but that's it's related, but
Okay.
it's handling FEMA, period. Yeah, and I just,
It would be worth Pat.
oh, definitely. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying it's not, what we need for the municipal is not just the FEMA related. This
Do we
is
have a
specific.
line item budget for employee training?
We must.
Minimal.
We must.
Professional development.
Yeah, but it's pretty minimal.
But nevertheless, again, if the line item is there, even if it's overspent, where we deem it necessary to the good of the municipality, that is
I think
okay.
it's called professional development.
So I don't know. I don't want to take our time, but I would like I will look for line item for NEMREC training for Pat.
Oh, yeah, that's a different.
So I will look at what we can say we're putting that to, but the bottom line is, are we agreed that that's a valuable service, that we need that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will check on that and we'll try to move forward with that. Okay.
And may I just suggest, if Pat has Lori or Penny come here, you know, we've got she needs to be absolutely uninterrupted with any outside calls or whatever, because they're charging $110 an hour.
Is that what it is? Okay.
And even on a Friday, we do want to interrupt. You know,
Yeah, Friday would be a good.
So Pat, you don't even get bathroom breaks. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
Then
Lori,
you
you.
schedule on a Friday.
Friday.
We else here.
Oh, you.
If she
Well,
will.
sometimes. Okay. Very good. Are there, Chris? I'm kind of throwing this to you. Are there other things that we should be talking about right now that came out in that meeting with the auditors, talking to the auditor?
I'm really hopeful. I got the sense that by the time he kind of pulls some of this together, that he himself will help direct NEMREC to help Maureen pull some of those items into order. And like I said, I think the biggest thrust of this is going to be to make sure that we've segregated out all that flood business from, and that may take us a little bit of time, but I think it can be done.
Okay.
I mean, so I'm hopeful about it. I think we've got some good players there in the auditors to help us do that.
Great. I was very pleased with them. I
Yes.
thought they were on top of the stuff.
Yeah,
Great. Okay. The next item of business is our junk ordinance violation. And here we do have a letter that Pat drafted for us.
It's right here. Not this
No, I'm just seeing some, yeah, I have it. Thank you. This letter, does everybody have it? I don't have to read it. Well, it just says it's for the public's purpose that we're, that she said this letter is written follow up to your letter regarding the outdoor storage of junk. 30-day notice to rid the property has ended, but it's not, they haven't completed it. We hope that this problem can be resolved without formal action. To that end, and to avoid further action by the board, we ask that you please call us on or before Friday, November 9th, to discuss your intent on this issue. Because basically we haven't been able to talk to them at all.
Right, I couldn't even get her on the phone. I was just getting voice messages.
I would just recommend that you say something more specific than call us. Maybe ask that she call you.
Okay. And I
Call.
changed the name
Your ex-
from
your-
John
Well,
to
I can sign, well, no, let's let you do it. Make it from you.
me.
Is
Okay.
that can be from you. Because you're representing us in this
Number.
case.
Okay.
So it
Well,
doesn't-
yeah, she can say administrative assistant on
Right.
behalf of the Newfane Selectboard Board.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
They do have a dumpster there
They do.
It's gone
Yeah.
right now.
as of this
Yeah,
afternoon.
it's
Had
gone
they
today.
They didn't empty
stuff in it?
Yeah. Yeah, they had
I mean,
stuff
had
outside
they-
of it too.
Yeah, well, that was my concern.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more there than one dumpster's holding?
Oh,
Is that
my
what we
goodness.
would gather?
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of junk.
But anyway, so to me, that at least said they were
Like, it
starting
should be
and trying.
intent, it's not intent of this issue. Discuss your intent. Just intent,
Yeah.
period. You can just
Okay.
end it there. Other thoughts about any amendments to the letter?
I'll change the date also.
Yeah,
so-
of course. Yeah, give her another week since we've
Okay.
sort of delayed.
I guess, actually, now that you're saying this intent of this issue, I mean, maybe there's a sort of a simpler way
Mm.
of saying that.
And
I see what
when
you-
you will complete the process.
Your plans to
To show you your
Discuss
plans,
your
to
intention
resolve your
to-
plans, to discuss your plan, your, well, go ahead, you got it, I started here.
I think you could just follow it up, discuss your intention to comply with
That's
this, or
what-
complete
So
this.
how about your plan to comply
You plan to clean the yard.
with,
Carry out this,
To-
our request.
all right, to comply with our request?
Not even comply, that's too.
No?
Carry out.
Okay, well, carry out isn't quite,
Well,
right
I just
word.
am trying to. be
Yeah, no, I
more
see.
plain
right,
English.
I understand. Well,
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, you
to
guys
resolve, how about
I
to
know.
resolve
to resolve.
this issue?
Back to the same
Then
thing.
comply.
Well, she didn't like comply. I thought maybe resolve would work better.
I'm not saying anything anymore.
Ever again. Well, at least I've made some progress. All right. Okay. Thank you.
I made my point.
Thank you. Excellent. Next item of business, the HMGP buyouts. Gloria, do you have an update on that?
Well, the two that I was looking at really do not meet the
Okay.
requirements, so I
So it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
We
it
got
is.
3, and we're still waiting on 279. What's happening with the
He
279?
said he was gonna talk to SVE about that and get back to us.
So it's still
You mean
pending?
Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy
S-
came in.
Yeah, that SVE came in, and I put a call through to Dan, so we did talk to Dan.
But you don't know what happened exactly. All right, so
Did he
we,
come back in here and say anything to you?
Dan said he spoke with him on the phone, but I don't know what was discussed. And Dan will be in tomorrow, and I'd be happy to find out what's.
okay, could you get us an update, Pat?
Yeah.
That would be great. Okay, this is just old business. We set our budget meetings. I actually have a conflict on one day, the 19th, and it's fine with me that we have a budget meeting at which I'm not present, but I'm just really informing the board. We will have been meeting already, and we can see whether we can either skip that meeting or skip me. But I'm
I
informing
actually
the
have a
board.
conflict that night also.
So maybe we should
I mean-
not, if two of us do, maybe we can cancel that one, and if we still need another meeting, we'll
We had other
schedule
meetings before then, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So why don't we deal with it
Yeah,
later?
okay. I just want people to know.
Right.
I don't want to, okay? We make.
We're gonna cancel the night.
No, we'll discuss it as we get closer to it, but we probably will cancel it.
It's two conflicts.
Yeah. Okay. I believe that, oh, no, it does not. Okay, correspondence. An unfinished, is there any, I don't see any unfinished business. I don't see, there's no administrative assistance report. And we go to correspondence.
Can I
thought
just
we-
say one thing about administrative assistance?
Yes.
That I had asked, I am very appreciative that, I asked Pat to put together all of this information for us, because I felt like it was just a little too, yeah. And now, when we get the financial, it's really going to be
A total package.
like Christmas every month,
Great.
twice a month.
Just what you ever
Yeah.
want. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. And I think we're all appreciative of the work you do for the board.
Yes.
The Perry letter, I thought we read it last time.
No,
No,
No, this
this
is
is a new
new.
one.
It's a new one? Oh.
this
no.
is thanking us.
Yeah, but I thought we read that
No,
last time.
that's-
That's
No,
new?
we received it just after the
Okay.
meeting.
So you may have read it too, so.
Thank you.
It's basically thanking us for,
And saying they're not
solve-
going to do what they said they were going to do until next year.
okay. Okay. Since we all have it, I don't think it's necessary to go further than that.
Harry's was thanked.
And then, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the thing that was mentioned, and I would be very pleased if Pat could attend it, but I'd also be pleased if a board member could attend it. That is this free audit seminar that is being offered by, it's actually the state seems to be putting it together, but they do have, the keynote speaker is a FEMA person who's going to talk about all these requirements. And I mean, this is, to be frank, this is a very serious issue for the town that will actually outlive this board. That is to say, what's very clear is that FEMA, you aren't really done with FEMA until 4 or 5 years out from the disaster, because they're looking at this point at, is this basically right? Is this basically right? Is that basically right? But then the FEMA audit comes through and they can say, yeah, that was basically right, but you didn't follow X, Y, or Z. You didn't dot this I or cross that T, and we're demanding the money back. So our knowledge on this is very important, and there will be a lot of work very clearly in talking to Christina even before that in terms of what we're going to have to do to protect ourselves in terms of a purchasing memo for record, what we're going to need to put into our files to cover any situation that isn't obviously cool.
Is this something we should ask Dan if he's interested in? Seeing as how he's
There's no reason not to. I mean, sure, and if he would like to, it would be great. If you wouldn't mind asking him, or Pat could ask him if he would like to attend. Of course, that would be terrific. There are 2 meetings. One's in, what is it, Fairleigh Lake or Lake Fairleigh?
Lake Morey.
Lake Morey, in Fairleigh. And that's on the 8th. And then there's another one in Rutland on the 9th. And I would be very pleased if one or more select board members could attend that so that we have this information.
Did I misunderstand when we had the meeting with the auditors? Isn't it Sullivan and Powers lead guy that's also going to be there? And didn't Christina Moore also say she would be attending?
She probably will. I think she is.
So
yes.
I think we do have.
We have some coverage. I just like
I know, but I'm
the
saying
comfort level of one of us.
It is,
being
yeah,
there.
But there just really is a point of information that we do have a 6 p.m. town meeting on the 8th.
Right, but the 8th,
Right.
no, it's at night. It is at night.
I know.
And it ends at 3.
It's at
So
night?
No, our town meeting's
Well,
at
but-
night.
Oh, okay.
And this is during the day.
Lake Morley is 2 and some odd hours. No,
I think it's just...
Rutland is the
Rutland's
one
for-
on the 9th?
is the closest.
Really? Rutland? I thought I looked up Lake Morley once and it wasn't
It's
as...
2 hours. It's a good 2 hours and
You've
15
gone to
minutes.
Lake
yeah.
Morley. Where is it? Is it? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
We've
okay.
been
All right.
there.
So Rutland, you're saying is closer?
It's
actually?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
40
I
minutes.
misunderstood
You couldn't
that.
get back in time for
All right, so yeah, it's rather crucial we all be there for that. Although I'm not planning on coming myself. I just thought I'd let you know.
Found another conflict, didn't you?
Yeah, I found something better to do with my time. Anyway,
I'm supposed to be going
if-
to a meeting that you're running on the 8th at 11 o'clock, correct?
yes,
Okay.
that's correct. I'm not running it, but I
Well,
am.
you're doing
I'm
something,
sort
you
of the-
organized it.
Right. So the 8th won't work, but the 9th.
I will consider it.
And I will consider it also. I do have a doctor's appointment, but it's a yearly, bi-yearly, whatever. It probably can be postponed. I want to postpone it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I will consider it. But please let me know whether you're going to go or not, because
Okay.
I think it would be good for one of us to be there.
Yeah, I would say if nobody else can, it's quote unquote my day off, so I could do that.
All right. So one of the
Prefer not to, because I'm not.
One of the 3 of us should be there, unless. And Chris, I only leaving you out because you didn't raise your voice.
You're right.
And I don't fault you on that.
I'll get the update from
Yes.
Rick and from Christina.
yes, yes. Okay. I don't think it's going to be pretty. This meeting. I don't think it'll
I
be
don't
pleasant.
either.
This meeting. Because I imagine they will state as you should have done this and you should have done that we may have done and we may not have done.
But,
Okay.
and just a point, I would think FEMA would be under such pressure after Sandy that, FEMA in the country is just so large and they've got major things to take care of now.
Yep.
So I hope they don't get into too many nitpicking. Did we forget, in old business, do we have any news on the bond for Bridge 14?
Do we have an update? They wanted our Dunn's number, wasn't that was that the bond or that something else?
In other words,
No, that was the mitigation.
Oh, that was something else. Okay.
yeah, someone.
Do we have any update? Pat, on the bond?
No, no, but
We-
if, go ahead.
Not for the bond, but she had to apply for a loan for the rest of the truck here right now. And she-
Okay.
Did that today.
Okay,
So that's in the works.
okay.
That truck should be here in the next 2 weeks, so.
I
And-
think the
And that
bu-
will be here for you guys to approve at the next board meeting so that the check can be cut. We can
To
have the check
sign,
on
we've
the
really
9th.
already
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah, that's right.
I think the bond, isn't that now, Giuliani, we gave him the last information that he needed for that.
And he
so-
said he was all set.
Yeah, so
All right,
they're
so as far as,
processing.
it's gonna take
So
some
that
time.
is an update.
It's gonna take some time. Okay,
So-
okay. The only, I think I sent it out to you, this traffic mitigation cost study, in case you're interested in it soon. It's Monday, the 5th. But I'll just pass it around in case you haven't seen it. I think I sent it to everybody, but if I didn't, and you're interested in that, that's another meeting that might be of interest. I believe that concludes our public business. Okay. I would then entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
And Mike, if you need
Second.
further stuff, this will be short. I don't think this is going to be a lengthy discussion. So if you could just hold on for
Just
5
point of order, when we're doing executive sessions, I was reading up on this here a while ago.
Okay.
We need to state why we're going to.
Oh, do we?
executive session,
We'd have to
or it's
state,
an illegal
okay.
meeting.
Okay.
It could be personnel, it could be real estate, whatever, but we gotta
We have to
state.
state the reason in the motion. Okay.
Nobody's
Okay. So
Wait,
far,
wait.
it's not been made yet.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss the district
Position.
appointment.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we go into executive session. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, it's been unanimous. We'll go into executive session. Executive session, regular session. Can I take a motion?
What was it? Coming elections in March.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. I think is there anything before?